the OHL has announced now some new on-ice player safety initiatives in cooperation with the Canadian Hockey League. And one of the focuses here is to cut down on staged fighting. David Branch is the commissioner of the Ontario Hockey League, one of our favorites, and he joins us on Primetime Sports. Hello, Mr. Branch.
Hi, Mr. Blair. Nice to be with you, and Mr. Friedman as well.
Now, you're not running for the next CEO of MLSE, are you?
You'll be the first to know, Elliot.
He probably would.
No,
After this week, he probably would. No. I think you're right.
No, I'm having too much fun where I am. So, I share some of your comments. Mr. Lewicki has been, I think, has done a lot in a short period of time, and that's what you've got to value in terms of what he's meant and what he's done. And, kind of on a selfish point of view, too, he was very instrumental in bringing the World Junior Tournament to Montreal, Toronto. So, he's quite a man.
Now, David, talk to us a little bit about this. I was almost going to call it. They're called initiatives, but it seems to me that you've sort of addressed a number of situations involving stage fighting, and again, the OHL taking steps to try to stay within the frame or the context of what we consider to be good physical hockey, while mitigating some of the unnecessary stuff. Talk to us a little bit about some of these initiatives you're taking.
Yeah, you really kind of, I think, framed it well. I think those of us that love the game value it for its speed, its skill, and its toughness, and we're not trying to in any way diminish that. We're trying to enhance it, quite frankly, by taking away some things that really don't belong in our game, and as we say, hopefully work towards eliminating the one-dimensional player, which I think all hockey at all levels has largely arrived at. So now it's a case of continuing to challenge the evolution of our game. And, it's interesting. And this isn't just all about fighting what we've done here. It is about safety, hitting from behind, checking to the head, and all those things. But an interesting statistic, which I think it has merits to articulate here, is last season we had 37% of our players who did not have one fight, and 60% of our players had one fight or less. So I think you really see the trends, and it allows us to enjoy attracting the Connor McDavids of the world, and before him, Aaron Ekblad, and so many. We've been very fortunate, and it's those players that make our game so very, very special in so many different ways. So this is in concert with the Western and Quebec Major Junior Hockey Leagues. Also, I can point out, I know that Colin Campbell and his hockey operations, we share ideas, we trade in ideas, and they've been a great support in, articulating some ideas that maybe we can put in and they can monitor and watch. And so together, hopefully, we'll continue to move the game in the right direction.
So now if there is a fight occurring immediately following any face-off during the game, the players involved will receive game misconducts in addition to the major penalty, correct? That's that's the staged fighting rule.
That's the stage fighting rule. And before, our stage fighting was just simply at the start of any period of the game. And we've broadened that now to include, as you've described, at any time. And all such incidents are reviewed. The game misconduct assessed at the start of the period of any game it carries with it an automatic one-game suspension. If during the broadening of this rule, if there's a game misconduct for a fight following face-off later in the period, shall we say, it'll be reviewed, and determination at that time, we'll see whether or not supplementary discipline should in fact be brought forward. So we think this is a real good step in the right direction, and then the whole issue of repeat offenders, whether it's now even minor penalties, making sure that we are monitoring those players and addressing it with them and their team, and once again, if need be, applying some sanction if warranted.
David, I remember when the NHL briefly discussed the stage face-offs, one of the arguments that came up was, okay, well, what happens if the puck drops and the players wait 3 to 5 seconds, or they skate around 10 seconds staring at each other and then fighting? Is that a stage fight? Like, did you guys have that debate too?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's the great thing about hockey people. I mean, they really drill down. They keep you on your toes. But the spirit is, in that instance that you've just described, Elliot,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a stage fight, And so the best time to bring about some change is the off season, when everyone is kind of removed from the action, shall we say, for a period of time. And our training camps start next week, and our season starts, third week of September. So we're getting ready and introducing and announcing, shall we say, the new rules now. So, yeah, it's a process.
At any point in this conversation, David, because I always wonder when or if this day is going to come, the discussion come up about any fight is an automatic game misconduct.
Great question. I mean, to me, one of the enlightened discussions we now have that I can recall certainly 2 years ago that you never had was that very point.
Mm-hmm.
And that is under discussion. And there's merits to it. And, of course, there's some valid reasons that you have to be cautious and careful as you analyze what might result if players, are not, in any way allowed to fight. So, I mean, it's an argument and a discussion that we're now having. And it's no different, Elliot, than you may remember, and Jeff, going back in 2006, which is now a few years ago,
mm-hmm.
The OHL introduced you cannot. There's no such thing as a legal check to the head,
Mm-hmm.
Right?
and and wow, we were going to take out the physicality of our game. We were going to change the game. Well, that's not been the case, and of course, I think now there's so much more information out there at all levels of the game as to the concerns about head injuries and how dastardly they can be, that most leagues now have that rule, and that's one that I think it's interesting to hear the culture now talking about concerns about safety and the welfare of the players going forward.
David Branch joins us on Primetime Sports. As a result of these initiatives, among other things, if a player receives a fourth minor penalty during the regular season for checking from behind, checking to the head, kneeing, clipping, or boarding, he will receive a 1-game suspension for each subsequent minor penalty in any of the particular categories. The suspension will be increased accordingly. I'm looking at some of these rules here. And what I like about this, David, is, essentially what you're doing here, stuff's going to happen in hockey, and people are going to make mistakes in hockey. It seems as if you're sort of going after the recidivist here, right? The guy who is repeatedly hitting from behind or repeatedly kneeing.
Absolutely. I mean, once again, you framed it in accurately. That's the approach. That's the thinking. And I'm sure most people would agree that all those type of penalties are very concerning in terms of the potential for injury. And the fact there was no injury, hey, we're trying to address it before one occurs. So it's, I think, a very positive move in the right direction.
You kind of alluded to this, Dave, in one of the last questions I asked you, but when it comes to the whole fighting debate, there are a lot of people who I consider very reasonable people who are afraid of the idea of a hockey game without fighting. They feel it's still very important as a deterrent against the things that they don't want in the game. Do you still believe that?
Personally, no. I look at our game when it's played, at the World Juniors, at the Olympics, at the World Championships, and even during the Memorial Cup. I mean, they're largely devoid of any fighting, and those games are looked upon and appreciated for everything that hockey stands for. And what I don't like is people that don't really know the game, I think, have a dim view of the fighting aspect in relation to the overall game. And it also goes to the challenges that we have in this country, and we're not alone, about attracting new Canadians and just generally, educating and helping to support parents make the decision to enroll their son or daughter into our game at the grassroots level. And because that's a big issue in our country, is the recruitment of players to play our game.
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm good.
David, it was great of you to join us today. Thanks so much. Again, these initiatives are, like I said,
interesting. They're very
interesting, and my sense is we're probably going to see them augmented in other leagues down the road. Thanks so much for doing this, as always.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, guys.
Take care.
Thanks very much, David.
David Branch, OHL Commissioner President of the CHL.